I don't know what I'm doing. I really don't have the mind for it. Yet another one, especially coming out of this movie I just came out of, which is Dark River.
Yeah.
This is a heavy-duty movie. It's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with Dark Money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's nice to sit down with you finally.
Yeah.
Officially.
Yes, here we are.
Here we are. Long roads lead to Filmwax, right? Anyway, how are you?
Doing okay.
Kimberly Reed. Yeah.
It's we're here at the Montclair Film Festival, which is kind of my backyard.
Your backyard,
So,
your local festival.
I drove over. It's kind of cool to do a local festival.
Yeah. So you had your premiere last night? Was it yesterday or was it which was Saturday?
The premiere at Montclair Film Festival was yesterday, yeah.
Your hometown premiere.
Hometown premiere, yeah.
Where did it have its world premiere?
The world premiere of Dark Money was at Sundance 2018, and it kind of feels like we already had the hometown premiere because we were at the Big Sky Documentary Film Festival, which is this great film festival, and that's where the film takes place, so that felt a little bit like our backyard, and we were the opening night film, so it was really fun.
Yeah, that's incredible. Opening night film, so that's their big, that's the main film.
Yeah. Yeah, we kicked it off.
And it was also in part because you are from?
Because I'm from there. I'm from Montana.
Where in Montana are you from?
Helena.
That's the capital of the state.
That's the capital city.
And this is your second feature that you've directed.
That's right.
You produced.
Yep.
I know you recently produced for
David France.
who's has been on this podcast.
Oh, cool.
And
The Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson.
Yeah, which is available on Netflix, since we brought it up.
Yeah.
The new film is called Dark Money, and it is a term now that's sadly becoming part of the vernacular, right?
Yes.
It's kind of the result of working the system, working the political gifting system, right?
Yeah. The IRS created these nonprofit organizations. Almost everybody knows what a 501c3 is, but there's also
we're at one right now.
We're at one right now at Montclair, Film Commission, nonprofit organizations. But with C3 designation, you can't talk about politics at all. Almost everybody knows what a 501c3 is, just a regular nonprofit organization that does not have to pay taxes. There's also something called a C4, 501c4 organization, and it's supposed to be a social welfare nonprofit organization. In our neighborhood, couple neighborhoods over.
Here in New Jersey.
I'm in we have a neighborhood association that's a C4. That's what a C4 is supposed to be doing. Like, we clean up the park and try to,
doing good.
Yeah, it's so doing things that, for the social welfare.
Benefit the welfare of the community.
Yeah, but in soon after the Citizens United decision from the Supreme Court, which was in 2010, Karl Rove actually kind of pioneered this loophole and saw that you could take a C4 organization, which is supposed to not have the majority of their operations taking place with a political purpose. You can't. It's not like a C3 where they say you have to do absolutely zero politicking. But that can't be your main purpose. So what he did was to kind of create this nonprofit organization that donors could give to. Those donors would not be divulged. We would never know who those donors are. And that Dark Money group could operate. They do all sorts of tricks with the books and make it look like less than half of their. Most people think that if you do less than half of your business, half of everything you do is engaged in politics, that you're below a threshold that the IRS is going to not go after you because your main purpose is not politicking. If 49% of what you do has to do with politics. So there's lots of ways to get around that. People just kind of give money to each other and make it look like that's the other half of their business, and
Right. Sure,
dark
sure.
money group A will
Right.
give it to dark money group B, and then all of a sudden they get a bunch of money.
If
that
you're
came from
clever
nowhere,
enough and crafty enough and motivated enough, I guess you can figure out how to just work the system,
Yes.
as it were, right to your advantage. And
Yeah.
so tremendous amounts of money are being floated to, I mean, it's basically special interests then are still giving money to politicians, right? And then influencing
Yep.
the outcomes.
And if you have a C4, a dark money group, you can, since Citizens United, those donations are unlimited. And with a dark money group, they're also anonymous.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, and there actually kind of used to be a pretty strong distinction between a super PAC and a dark money group, but now people use them hand in hand so much. Like, for example, we talked about Karl Rove in 2012 election cycle. He created Crossroads GPS as a dark money group that would be a companion to his super PAC, American Crossroads.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all they do is just pass money back and forth to further obfuscate the system. And, of course, all of this
Was that
is
for like raising money for Mitt Romney? What was that election?
They've played in a bunch of different
Tea Party,
elections. Yeah. Actually, 2012, we're talking about Montana. Tester ran for Senate. It was a very important seat
Tester.
in 2012. And
back in the news.
He's back in the news because he's running again 6 years later, which is how long it took me
But
to make this film.
he also turned the spotlight on to Jackson, Ronnie Jackson, right?
Ronnie Jackson.
Isn't he the one that kind of blew the whistle on him?
Who Trump has recently appointed to be
head of the VA.
head of the VA.
Lead the VA, yeah.
Yeah, and Tester pointed out a couple reasons why that may not be a good idea.
Yes, right. And it's no longer an idea.
Yes.
it's an ex-idea now.
He would do, but it looks like Trump's still going after Tester. We'll see.
Right. Well, what is your connection to Montana? Well, we already established you're from Montana. So the film, though, this is your way in, I should say, right, into making the documentary, was that you were finding that back home, the state of Montana, it seemed to be one of the more especially affected states.
That's right. Yeah. When I heard about the Citizens United decision, I didn't quite know what to do. Like a lot of people, it was just kind of gobsmacked at this decision coming from the Supreme Court. But I really saw my home state of Montana really fighting back with a lot of these campaign finance issues. It's rare that you see kind of a clear antagonist and protagonist with these issues of money and politics. And usually, people don't want to stand up and declare themselves either the protagonist or the antagonist, either the person who's trying to, in the case of what was going on in Montana, the same group of lawyers who were behind Citizens United were also opening offices in Montana and trying to erode Montana's relatively strong campaign finance laws because they saw that, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. If we can erode these laws, we can do it across the U.S. And I saw all of these legislative volleys happening in the state, but I also, having grown up there, understood how Montanans were going to push back because there's a very strong culture against corporate control of politics, against corruption in political campaigns. And most of that is because, there's not a lot of people that live in Montana. It's a resource-rich state, so there's lots of people who want to come in and develop those natural resources. And what you usually find is that money coming in, trying to control the politics so you can control the laws that let you pull lots of money out of them thar hills. And that's been happening for a century, and Montanans have seen the result of it by and large. There's in the film, we kind of metaphorically use this thing called the Berkeley Pit, which is the largest Superfund site that is just a big toxic pit of water that has a well-established pattern of killing birds, especially huge flocks of snow geese that land in the Berkeley Pit.
Right, and I know
from
they're
time to
headed
time
for their doom. It's tragic.
Basically, the Berkeley Pit used to be a massive open pit mine.
Okay.
The Berkeley Pit used to be a massive open pit mine where you just, open a huge hole in the earth.
Yeah.
When you do that and you mine below the water table, you got to pump the water out of this big massive hole in the earth.
Right, sure.
When it was kind of hit that whisper number where it was no longer profitable to mine, they actually shut down the mine, which meant letting the groundwater come back in. But that groundwater is being filtered through, the mining waste. So it's incredibly acidic.
Right.
It's full of heavy metals, and it's just completely toxic.
Right, and then it gets into everything.
Yep.
Right, and not only just the drinking water, but right, the whole sort of.
Yeah, it's a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah.
And it's close to getting so full. This massive pit is close to getting so full that it's going to start spilling over the top. So everybody's trying to figure out what to do with it now and how to remediate it. And
yeah, right.
Yeah. So
it's a disaster. Yeah, and put on top of that a layer of deregulation fervor, which is going on right right now in this country like crazy, like mad, right? And that can't help.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, so what are you going to do? But the way this gets used in the film is that this pit is kind of a, it's the way I think a lot of Montanans think of it. It's this sore that is a result of corporate control of politics. There's every Montanan grows up learning about the battles between the copper kings in Butte, Montana. Butte, Montana is known as the richest hill on earth. The lot of the copper wiring in some of these buildings around here probably came from Butte, Montana.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was, the city that electrified the nation. And there's a lot of early labor movement. Butte was the city that electrified the nation. So hearing about these battles between these industrialists in the early 1900s was a history that I was very familiar with. And it's in a lot of ways, it's just the ambiance that people who grow up there have, of this kind of basic distrust of industrialists with a lot of money who are coming in to, remove natural resources. And that's just kind of a metaphorical way that these guys, this history, these industrialists work. But there were also some very specific, not metaphorical things that happened as a result of that. One of which was the Corrupt Practices Act of 1912, which was a broad-based citizens initiative 100 years ago. Where Montana just said, look, we're tired of this. We're tired of this corruption, this rampant corruption where one rich guy, they were thinking of this guy named William A. Clark, where one rich guy can come in and buy up all the newspapers and buy up all the mines and and essentially run politics in the state. There's this famous story where William A. Clark, took out ads in his own newspapers saying that this was back when legislators would elect senators. We now have the direct election of senators, but this is when people who were elected to the state legislature would elect senators. And William A. Clark took out ads in his newspapers offering to pay each legislator who voted for him to go to the Senate. He would pay them $10,000. Which was an enormous amount.
100 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An enormous amount.
That's like $1 million now.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And so he would have his henchmen standing on the edge of the floor of the legislature with little envelopes, had his initials on it, passing out, these envelopes. Or the other thing they would do is throw them over the transom into the hotel where all the legislators stayed. Actually, this just so happened that William A. Clark was elected senator under this this plan. And he went to Washington, D.C. And when he got there, the sitting senators were so disgusted with the corruption that was going on in Montana, they refused to seat him and they kicked him out.
Wow.
Sent him back to Montana. And so
they have their standards.
Yeah. So kind of long story short, the Montanans said, look, we're done with this. We don't want corporate money in politics.
Right.
And we're going to keep corporate money, corporate donations from being able to go directly to candidates. And, we don't want to have that in our politics. We've seen that this wrecks it. And so one of the things that we follow in the film is kind of based on this strong history of resisting corporate money in politics. Yeah. Is we follow the Attorney General at the time. His name was Steve Bullock, as he takes a case led by Montana with about half of the states signing on, and he goes to the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn Citizens United. At least that's what the case was. It did not turn out that way. The U.S. Supreme Court summarily reversed Montana's 100-year-old law, and that's the kind of the ground in which all of this kind of fight against the influence of money in politics takes place. Wow.
Another theme in this is journalism, right? In the film, because there is one lone voice in a sense. Well, there are more than one, of course, but your film has a hero in an old-fashioned journalist, a kind of guy who likes to do journalism the old-fashioned way. One man standing against sort of the wind of the wave of corruption and cynical politics and all, and he's fighting a really strong resistance.
Yeah, his name is John S. Adams. Should we wait for that?
No, that's my ride. I have to. Oh, is that one of the Teslas up front? I don't know.
Yeah, I want one.
We're at a film festival. There, we're not trying to hide that. That there's all sorts of activities.
It's got to be really annoying talking to filmmakers all the time because I always overseeing all of the
There's been some, there's some that come in and they're very, very hyper aware, like yourself. But it's a nice thing.
Didn't say anything about the HVAC yet. So.
No, I know. I'm aware too. This is relatively benign. I've been in ones where kind of all of a sudden you'll be talking and it just sort of kicks in. Yeah. And cool. I just sort of say, well, this is about the content, not the always about the sonic quality, but and also I'm invariably in however many flights up from the street and the sound just leaks into the show. The sounds of the cityscape.
Good.
So it's part of my show. Honks, sirens, people screaming for their lives. I'm not sure what that's.
I think the phone over there is ringing.
Oh, is that a phone?
Yeah.
It's hard for me to.
I think the phone is ringing.
Anyway, so John S. Adams, is that what you said? Or John?
I think it's really a David and Goliath story about
it is. He's like
John S. Adams trying to. So our film is about money in politics and the influence of money in politics, and the way that you break it down. The way that you combat that system is, one, you need a strong watchdog press that has people reporting on this.
Right.
And there was actually, the film took 6 years to make, so it kind of followed these different election cycles. And 2004, we're kind of plugging away. In 2012, we're kind of plugging away. This was the first election cycle I followed. In 2014, you saw, the influence of these dark money groups grow. And then suddenly, when everybody had a culture of people who were paying attention to this and a very, very strong fourth estate in the press who was covering all of these issues, within the space of a couple weeks, all of the state house bureaus in Montana were shut down. There's one major newspaper chain called Lee Newspapers, and they fired 2 reporters who had, they didn't really fire them, they offered them buyouts, but same results. They shut it down. And a couple weeks apart from that, John Adams, essentially the same thing happened to him from the... It was called the Great Falls Tribune, which is a Gannett newspaper. And it's emblematic of the collapse that's going on with the print industry. and was State House news coverage. And it became a very natural subplot to follow, when we're trying to focus on these issues in the film and digging in with John as our as our envoy, as our kind of leading us through these investigations to figure out who's behind all this stuff. All of a sudden, the newspaper just shut down their state bureaus. So it's very dramatic, and a lot of people really worried what was going to happen. And kind of mild spoiler alerts here, but John finds a way to regroup and to start up his own news service. I'll have folks kind of see how that goes in the film, but it's like, he becomes this kind of crusading.
Who is the writer? But the point is that he in a way, what we're seeing with this journalist and with all the other components of the film is we're seeing a kind of a granular version or sample of what seems to be going on in the country. It's like all of a sudden there's a lot at stake and a lot in jeopardy that's in jeopardy in terms of our basic principles, our basic American principles and values and our rights we sort of take for granted. And then there's the John who kind of he's standing there with his little sword, but he also represents hope in a way, because it does come down to the grassroots.
I think he really does. I think he really does.
Yeah.
And like one of the last night at the film festival, we had we're here in New Jersey, and there was a local reporter who basically started up their own news service after layoffs at the Bergen Record.
Wow.
And the Newark Star Ledger. And he is a member of this organization called the Institute for Nonprofit News, INN.org. So we tracked him down through this organization of basically local journalists who are trying to fighting to keep covering these really important issues. And I think that there is a sense of hope, as you say. And there's also a sense of just real threat, because one of the things I think that happens in our film that I think is really exciting when you're watching it is that we have this series of really bizarre leaks that other people and John Adams start chasing down. And it just happens that, when you scratch the surface of what's really going on in most politics, you just find every time you turn the light on, you see a bunch of bugs squirming all over the place, and you actually see what's going on all the time. And that's what happens with these leaks that show up, these leaks of documents and emails that show up in our film. And when that is happening all the time, and when that a journalist, if they can just focus on this stuff and flip on those light switches, this is what they see all the time, this rampant corruption, it makes it pretty scary when you start to consider that these journalists are just going to not be there and not be turning on those light switches, and that rampant corruption that's going on is going to continue to fester.
I was watching the congressional hearings on Scott Pruitt last week, and I was just sort of amazed by how their partisanship has taken such hold on these politicians that it's more important to them than the environmental threat against their own constituency in their own states. That there are congressmen from, the heartland states, which all have there's a lot of threats against, their environment, the environments in their states and parkland and other resources, but that's more important to them that they support this corrupt guy Pruitt than it is for them to do their job. I can't believe it's at that point.
There's one guy the other day, Mitch Mulvaney, who runs the Congressional Budget Office.
Right.
I think he runs both the CBO and the whatever they recently renamed Elizabeth Warren's partner for the. I don't know what it's called, but Mick Mulvaney said, if you're a lobbyist and you don't donate any money to me, I'm not going to talk to you. If you're a lobbyist and you do donate money, I might talk to you. Mick Mulvaney.
Yeah, I saw that's right. Yeah, just blatantly, not even ashamed of, or self-conscious of.
And this is what I think. This is what people in our country on both the right and the left, on all sides of political, are just like think this is what's going on. They suspect it's what's going on, and it is what's going on.
Right.
And, again, scratch the surface just a little bit, and this is what you find.
Again, the film is called Dark Money. Where is the film going next? And also we were going to maybe hold on to this till the broadcast. Yeah,
so we've had a really fun and I think effective
festival run.
Run.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, actually.
Yeah, and the really cool thing about it too is that the film uses Montana as a microcosm to show this is how it works. This is how you can understand what's going on with money and politics and what to do about it. So it's been fun to take the film to different places where people see this Montana microcosm, but then in the Q&As after the film, they just take it and apply it to the local situation.
They recognize
what's going on.
right.
Because it's a very, it's easy to map on to, this is not uncommon. And
so the festival conversations are very gratifying because you're able to kind of share that with people. And
people are really applying the film to their own circumstances, which is what we wanted to do with the film. And then we open in theaters starting on July 13th at the IFC Center here in New York, and 2018. And we're going to do platform release out from there through the fall, and then have I don't know if we know the exact date right now of the broadcast, but it's going to be this fall, before the election, on POV.
Oh, that's
so
good.
Check your local PBS listings.
Well, and we'll remind people where they can see it, but
great.
We'll hopefully get people into the theaters to see Dark Money, directed by Kimberly Reed. And you've got J. Arthur Sternberg, who helping on the film. Who's a friend,
Jay's a great editor, and he and the Meerkat Media Collective were kind of enlisted a lot of them in helping on this film. A lot of the cinematography came from Eric Phillips Horst, who's also in Meerkat.
And by the way, since we brought up the Meerkat, I happen to know this is going to go up after the fact probably, but as we talk, they're doing sort of an open call for new members.
Yeah,
for the first time in a long time.
They are first time in a long time looking for new members of the co-op, and they also have an artist residency that they tend to have open calls for. So people should keep an eye out for that too. And
your producer,
Katy Chevigny, came on to help produce after I'd been kind of plugging away for a while, and I think really helped us, land the film, brought on a lot of investors. We have a pretty complicated blend of investors and donations, and a lot of support from the Ford Foundation and Threshold Foundation, Chicago Media Project.
Well, I hope
Chicken and Egg, yay!
Great people.
Yeah.
I hope the film really sparks a real fire in people's under people's their cockles. What do they get? Their fire.
Their hackles.
How do you get hackles?
Get their hackles.
Get their hackles. That's what it is. Get people angry and get them on their feet and get them protesting.
And I think it gives people a sense of hope too. I mean, there's a lot of documentaries out there that get you all kind of scared.
And agitated. But
I think there are things we can do about this, and I think our film shows that too.
Right. Well, hopefully, maybe we'll even follow up. Maybe we'll have another opportunity to sit and do a part 2 to this. But
maybe like after theatrical and before broadcast or something.
That'd be great.
Bump it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for
your
persistence.
Oh,
to finally connect. It's awesome.
For sure.